Yeah. So, I mean, I think, the U.S. was very early on in putting some rules around cryptocurrencies. It was mostly around sort of AML, KYC, Bank Secrecy Act. And that allowed, I think, companies like Coinbase, my former employer, to be as successful as they are because they had certainty and clarity around what their business was doing. Obviously, recent developments are more focused on the ICO space, and the SEC and the CFTC are trying to figure out sort of where they fall. My guess is over the next year that will clear itself up too, in addition to probably some more enforcement actions against companies they feel haven't done the right thing. But the U.S. has been pretty innovation friendly, I think, and there's been a desire to nurture this industry, but also work to mitigate the risks where they might exist. Yeah, I don't know in terms of just technology broadly. I do think what I would not be surprised to see over the next 6 to 9 months is a renewed focus on the Bank Secrecy Act, AML, KYC piece. I think there is concern about the platforms that, in some cases, the ICO and token platforms, and whether or not they've had compliant AML, KYC programs. I think there's also concern about exchanges that are operating without knowing who their customers are, and whether or not nation-state actors are using that to avoid and evade sanctions. That, I think, is going to certainly be a focus of the administration and probably Congress. Yeah, I mean, it seems like, in China there was a very quick reaction to the rise in the markets, both in terms of the amount of miners and mining operations that were happening in China and the amount of energy was being used, but also, around the amount of capital that was maybe being taken out of the country, and whether or not the exchanges were operating honestly in terms of the volume and that sort of a thing. So that seemed to be the focus and response from China. In Korea, it does seem like it's been much more of a collaborative approach. Government seems like they're sort of taking their time. I think initially there was a snap reaction that they sort of brought back. But their focus now, and it's interesting the way in which Korea is operating with the exchanges, is they've kind of placed the responsibility on the banks who are working with the exchanges to handle some of the compliance issues. And I think, it was discussed earlier today, there's legislation that's expected out in maybe June or July. So it seems like it's going to be informed by a little bit more experience and a little bit more conversation, which is probably positive. These markets are obviously very sensitive. And so when you see government action of any sort, there is response. My sense is probably as these markets mature, that will become less so. Volatility will decrease. I think too, in part, one of the reasons for the run up, I would say, is because the industry is more regulated than it was prior. That adds value. There's something called a regulatory multiplier for companies. A regulated industry is worth more than an unregulated industry because investors have confidence in it. There's not fear that it's going to be shut down. So, while there may be some gyrations in the short term, long term, I think it'll be very positive. Well, I mean, I think one of the things that I really enjoy doing is, working with companies in this space who are trying to do it the right way, trying to work with government and work with the media, and have a larger conversation around how you can build out this community in a way that's responsible, but also that's productive and that keeps the innovation factor that makes it so unique. So, I love Coinbase. It's a great company. I talk to those guys all the time, but it's nice now to sort of be able to come do these sorts of things and talk and work with other companies in the space who are trying to, hopefully be the size of Coinbase one day. So I think, it's like any new technology, there's a lot of questions around it, although I think there are a number of people, let's just take the US for instance, that actually do know quite a bit about the technical details as well as the industry details. I think there is obviously concern about mitigating the risk, but at least in the U.S., there's been a real hunger to nurture innovation in the financial technology sector largely and beyond crypto, and I think that is going to continue.